Okay, so a single social media post just dropped, and it could completely change your credit card bill. Seriously. But how real is this whole thing? Let's dig in and figure out what's actually on the table. And it all boils down to this one number, 10%. That's it. Seems simple, right? But believe me, what this could mean is, well, it's anything but simple. So where did this number even come from? Well, here it is. This is the post that started it all, right from Truth Social. Donald Trump put it out there, calling for a one-year cap on credit card interest rates. He said, and I'm quoting here, "We will no longer let the American public be ripped off by credit card companies." And just like that, boom, the debate was on. All right, so let's break this down. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the announcement itself. What are we really talking about here? Okay, so the details are actually pretty clear. We're talking about a temporary cap, just for 1 year. The rate? A flat 10%. But what's really interesting is the timing. It's set to start on a potential inauguration day in 2026. And, this whole thing didn't come from some big policy document. It came from a social media post. That's pretty unusual.
Okay, but this is where it gets complicated, right? I mean, it's one thing to say you want a cap. It's a whole other thing to actually make it happen. So how would this even work?
So can a president just do this? Wave a pen, sign an order, and suddenly cap the interest rates for every private credit card company in the country? And the short answer, nope, absolutely not. Pretty much every analyst agrees that this kind of thing is way outside of a president's power to do alone. To make this happen, you'd need an actual act of Congress. It would have to pass both the House and the Senate. And this is a really important piece of the puzzle. The announcement was a call to action, for sure, but it didn't back any specific bill that's already out there. So for now, you've got to think of it more like a declaration of what he wants to do, not a move to pass an actual law. At least not yet. Now, you can bet an idea this huge got people talking. And the reactions were, well, they were all over the map. So let's dive into who's on board, who's raising an eyebrow, and who's just flat out against it. The political world jumped on this immediately. Senator Elizabeth Warren, for example, basically called it a joke if there's no actual bill behind it. She's saying, look, a real effort needs legislation, and she even said she'd be willing to work on something like that. And on the other side, the financial industry came out swinging. Major banking groups put out a joint statement, and their argument is that a 10% cap would totally backfire. They're warning it would cause banks to lend less money, shrinking the amount of credit out there, and could even push people who are really struggling toward way riskier things, like payday loans. But this is where things get really, really interesting, because even with all that pushback and skepticism, the basic idea of a rate cap, it's not a simple left versus right thing, not at all. In fact, you find supporters in some very unexpected places. I mean, check out these political pairings. It's kind of wild. In the Senate, you've got Bernie Sanders, an independent, teaming up with Josh Hawley, a Republican, on this. And it's the same story in the House. Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez working with Republican Anna Paulina Luna on a similar bill. It's one of those super rare moments where the populist left and the populist right are basically saying the same thing. We need to rein in the big banks. Okay, so to get the full picture here, we need to zoom out and look at the context. Because when you look at the recent history, things start to look, well, a little conflicting. So look at the sequence of events. First, you have the campaign pledge to cap interest rates. Got it? But then there's a move to get rid of a rule that capped credit card late fees. And now we're back to calling for a 10% interest rate cap. So how do you square all that? Yeah, so you can see why it feels like a mixed message, right? On one hand, you're pushing for this rate cap, which is seen as helping consumers. But on the other hand, you've got a move that sides with the banking industry on late fees. It's definitely a bit of a head-scratcher when it comes to a consistent policy on financial rules. Okay, so after all that, what does this actually mean for you, for the average person holding a credit card? Let's talk about what's really on the line here. When you get right down to it, it's a huge trade-off. It's like two sides of a coin. For you, the consumer, the promise is awesome. Lower borrowing costs. That could save you a ton of money. But the flip side, the warning from the industry is pretty serious. They say to make up for those losses, they'd have to tighten their belts, which means it could get a lot harder to get credit, especially for people who don't have perfect credit scores. All right, let's do a quick recap of the big takeaways. Number one, this is just a proposal right now, it's not a law. 2, for it to become law, Congress has to pass it. 3, the banking industry is going to fight this tooth and nail. And 4, and this is the surprising part, the basic idea actually has support from both Democrats and Republicans. And that leaves us with the one massive question that sits at the center of this whole thing. Is the promise of lower borrowing costs for millions of people worth the risk of making it harder for others to get credit at all? Especially when those people might be the ones who need it the most? That's the big multi-billion-dollar question that everyone's going to have to grapple with.